views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello, I am Jose Higuera, Deputy Director of the Mexican Studies Institute at CUNY. Welcome to one more edition of the Oral History Project. Today, I have the pleasure to welcome our guest, Carlos Menchaca, Council Member for the 38th District of the New York City Council. Carlos, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Carlos, we want to start by asking you, what does it represent for you to be the first Mexican-American council member in New York City?
Jose, es un orgullo. It's a lot of pride that New York City was able to have the opportunity to elect the first Mexican American. I think the story, though, is really about how the community in Sunset Park in Brooklyn, the district that I represent, District 38, in 2013 came together and said, we want new leadership. And it was the moms of El Pueblo of Sunset Park that came together and said, we want better schools. And it was because of that energy that I even had the opportunity to run and win.
That's great. And so just going back to your background, so where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Brooklyn?
No, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, a border town. Of both in El Paso and Juarez, 3 million people. My family's history is a really, I think, beautiful history. My grandpa came over on the Bracero program. My mom was born in the United States but was raised in Mexico. And it really kind of talked a lot about, my history anyway, talks a lot about living on the border and what it meant for Mexicans who were crossing and living together. What I found very quickly when I was growing up was that half of my family was in Mexico, Mexican nationals, and we grew up in El Paso itself, and there was a lot of real division about how we grew up in public housing with all the public benefits, food stamps, and we would share essentially our bounty with our cousins, and that was an injustice for me. I saw that as an opportunity to change government. I was going to be the mayor one day of El Paso as a kid. I thought, I'll change the laws so that we can share all the resources that we have in El Paso. I think that's why you see me here today fighting for our people.
So did you start your public service in El Paso, or was it here in New York?
I was just remembering today at a public hearing, my first moment of activism was fighting against a New York City sludge and trash contract that was going to bury environmentally hazard trash in our backyard in El Paso. So I felt like that was the first part of my activism and public service. I then went to the Jesuit University of San Francisco, where I learned a lot about values and how we bring education and activism forward, and got involved in political campaigns. I was always running for things in school. So I was a student body president at my university. I was a senior class president in high school and student body vice president in middle school. So I feel like I've always been trying to figure out how to bring voices of my community to fruition.
And so what made you decide to go to San Francisco? Was it for school, or was it a specific reason?
Well, I came out as gay in high school, and that being the first in my family to go to college was difficult to figure out where I wanted to go. And I thought, okay, I need to go to San Francisco. And then I chose a private institution. And so that's how I chose San Francisco. I wanted to be in a place that I thought was a lot more inclusive than El Paso. It was really hard growing up in a public high school. And that's what landed me there. But I found an incredible opportunity to blossom as the gay Mexican activist that I am now.
And then you moved to New York, fast forward?
And then I moved to New York. And that was another moment of the universe coming out and saying, hey, we need you in New York. I applied for the Coro Fellows Program, and it's a national organization, and New York was the last place I wanted to go, but the director there recruited me to come to New York, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the energy of New York City, and really understanding how public policy works here gave me an opportunity to step in and make some changes, even from my first years working for the Brooklyn Borough President's Office on economic development issues, LGBT issues, immigrant issues, that laid the foundation for my eventual run for City Council.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you were the first council member to be openly gay elected to Brooklyn?
That's right, yeah. There have been many attempts to elect an openly gay legislator from Brooklyn, and I became, in 2013, after my primary election and general election, the first openly gay legislator in Brooklyn.
Did you find any backlash or any I don't know, like prejudice?
No, that was the beautiful thing about the campaign. From the very beginning, there was a very openness to the campaign, to me as an openly gay Mexican. We built an incredible coalition of people who really thought about what they wanted, and this campaign was more about them, less than me. And everyone from Borough Park to the public housing residents, Chinese, Mexican community members, everyone came together. There's a huge Yemeni and Palestinian population as well, and we all said, hey, that you this is their voice to me, you will be our representative. Tú eres nuestro gallo, is how the Mexican moms would tell me.
That's great, Carlos. And Carlos, how do you see the future of the LGBTQ community in New York City? Do you see them more actively participating? Do you see something?
I see and hope for an explosion of representation across the boroughs. I still remain the only openly gay legislator from Brooklyn. That needs to change. I think we need more gender nonconforming representation, especially our trans Latinas who continue to get not just from the police, but harassed from communities. And that's why we need that voice, to be able to say, hey, we're here, we have power, we have political voice, and we need laws to change, resources to be redirected, and a real change in their ability to fight. And there's some incredible trans Mexicanas fighting right now in Bushwick, in Brooklyn. So that's what I see. I see more empowerment, but I see just direct representation from communities that have yet to join the council.
Thank you, Carlos, for sharing this part of your story
Yeah,
with us.
thank you.
Let's take a short break, and we'll be right back with the Oral History Project. Welcome back to the Mexican Studies Oral History Project. If you are just joining us, today we are talking to Carlos Menchaca, council member for the 38th District of the New York City Council. Carlos, thank you for being here. So let's go back a little bit to your childhood. Can you tell us a little bit about how it was growing in El Paso for you as a child?
Well, the first thing you have to know is I was raised by a single mom, and there were 7 of us total. So it's a big family, a true Mexican family. I'm the oldest boy, and I think in a lot of ways, in our struggles, my mom was suffered from a lot of alcoholism through most of my childhood growing up. There's a lot of domestic violence from my father, and as a family, we really, as brothers and sisters, we really kind of came together and supported each other. That I think really stayed with me as in terms of values and how families are so resilient as we can kind of come together. Being the first to graduate and go to college, that has been a big value for us in my family. Not everyone has gone to college, and so there's still a lot more we can do from that perspective as far as how we support each other. But we still talk, and they're far away now. They're in El Paso. They're far away from me. But my mom comes and visits once or twice a year, and it's just really beautiful that we're still close and that we've really survived everything that's happened in our family.
That's great, Carlos. And tell us a little bit about your district, your population. I know that you mentioned that it's a large Mexican population at Sunset Park.
Yes.
Can you tell us, are there many specific issues that the community is facing right now in Sunset Park?
Absolutely. From the very beginning, especially during the campaign in 2013 and even now, there's a real thirst and hunger for the mostly immigrant population that lives in the District 38 to have a voice and shape the conditions around education and housing. I think those are the biggest asks that our communities is really pushing me and the council and the state and the federal government. Then overlaying all of that is immigration. But let's talk about education. The very first thing that the community asked, and really these are the mothers of the neighborhood, was technology to be placed into classrooms. The stories that I heard of neglect from the school construction authority just showed that people didn't have access to computers and things that were so basic. Also, the schools were overcrowded. Now, I'm so happy to report that there are 7 new schools getting built, and education is now being taken care of, and that's what our immigrant families care about. Housing is a big thing. Gentrification is real in our neighborhood, and people are feeling priced out and evicted many times illegally from their apartments, and so we're bringing lawyers to make that happen. But overall, immigration is an issue, and so we've been doing a lot of work to ensure that anyone who finds themselves in a deportation proceeding has a lawyer, and this is the first of its kind through my leadership in the city council to bring legal representation. If you can't afford it, you'll have a lawyer to protect yourself, and we know when you get a lawyer, your chances of staying in your home and either through housing or because of deportation, you'll be protected, and everyone has rights.
That's great.
Everyone has rights, and so that's part of the work that we're doing in Sunset Park and the city.
And can you tell us a little bit more about any other achievements and legislative matters for the community that have you?
One of the first projects that we did was IDNYC, the identification cards,
Yes.
municipal. We weren't there first, but we are, I believe, the best. And this was really designed by the community who really needed a government-issued identification to engage in say, the with police. A police can issue a summons with this ID, and people can kind of walk away, and also report crimes. And those are the kind of things that the community was asking for. But it also gives access to now hospitals and libraries and schools where some families weren't even able to go to their PTAs, the Parent-Teacher Association meetings. Those are things that have really helped the community, and that's a legislative victory that came from the community, designed by the community for the community, and that's just an example of that. The budget continues to grow in terms of adult education classes, again, the legal representation, and then also just very important is the participatory budgeting work that we're doing in our communities, where communities can design their own projects and vote on them to invest in their parks, their schools, their streets, security cameras. These are all things that community can take the lead and decide for themselves. This process allows for anyone to vote, including now 4th and 5th graders and older in our schools. And so even 4th graders are going out with their parents who are undocumented potentially and voting in a local district election to spend capital infrastructure money. That's all really changed the way that our neighborhood in Sunset Park is engaging with government, building trust, and building better communities, safer communities.
That's great, Carlos. And why is it important for you to promote the PB, for the people to be engaged in this?
I think we're living in a time right now, it's just one chapter of a moment where the federal government has been so, in messaging, so hateful towards immigrants, especially Mexican communities, calling them rapists and murderers, and that is not at all who we are as a people. And any immigrant or Muslim communities that have been attacked. And so what this does, this participatory democratic process, allows for people to come out, engage, show their true power of organizing, and in one moment talk about how they're making their communities better. And everything is just better. We're building better schools, more schools. Our parks are clean because our neighborhood is coming together and organizing. We're more organized, and more organized communities are safer. They're better, and they're ready to
more
battle.
empowered, right?
They're empowered, and they're more resilient against any kind of forms of hate that might be coming, even from the president himself.
Do you feel like this also opens up the space for them to start thinking about maybe running for office?
Yes, there are some incredibly young leaders in our district that are already thinking about running for president, for governor, for mayor, for city council, and they're already able to see how their power and their voice matters. After we just passed the 1-year anniversary of the shooting in the Parkland High School shooting, and some of the strongest voices were not coming from elected officials or older people. They were coming from the students who organized. That's the flavor that is there right now, and so I really do see a hopeful future because of what I see right now, and we're able to do that and really offer them that opportunity to connect to their powerful voice and then execute on that, and that's just, I think, one of the more beautiful things of my job.
And you're a strong advocate for many other things also, and I know that you were doing some civil disobedience. You were arrested. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, civil disobedience has always been part of my set of core values, really confronting the system. So yeah, getting arrested with my colleagues and community members around airport workers, El La Guardia, the carwacheros in Sunset Park as well. And all these victories have really come from the attention that we were able to get from that community action, and so this is another way that people can come out and get arrested, and not everyone can, especially immigrants, but we as citizens and others and allies can really come together, and we're going to continue to do that.
That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Thank
Carlos,
you.
we're going to take a short break, and please stay with us, and we'll see you in a little bit to the Mexican Studies Oral History Project.
From the north to the south to the west to the east, we are expanding our services and upgrading technology at Lehman College. And now, Bronxites have an innovative media production facility in the East Bronx at Mercy College in the Hutch Metro Center. The windows on the East Bronx studio, a state-of-the-art control room, media labs for production and training, and other media-capable spaces. Training, workforce development, leading-edge technology, and programs that help you share your ideas, your voice, on your channels, locally and globally. Build media and technology skills at BronxNet and build your dreams.
welcome back to the Mexican Studies Oral History Project. We're talking to Carlos Menchaca, City Council member of the 38th District. Carlos, thank you again for being here with us. So can we talk a little bit about what does a council member do? What is a council member? For those viewers
Yes.
that don't know what a council member does.
Yes, the New York City Council is comprised of 51 members. Our districts are about 180,000 people. Some bigger than cities across the country. And we are really the front lines of engaging local community members and their needs, their immediate needs. So we really are the kind of connection to the city agencies that provide education, in our schools, sanitation pickup. If there's a raccoon issue, you call your council member. So we really are the front lines, and we have district offices. And so my district office is in Sunset Park, and people can walk in and say, hey, I have a problem. And sometimes it's to complain about the trains. Our trains right now are in horrible disrepair, or a pothole. And so we'll take anything and everything and see if we can solve their problem. We're problem solvers. We have a lot of ability to pass budgets that can actually resolve some of these problems. And so we finally approve the budget every year in June. But we also create laws, and that's one of the more fun things that we're able to do, and respond to issues through changing laws. I'll tell you about some of the things we're working on right now. We're trying to make it safer for bicyclists to travel through the city. One of the laws is to allow for people to use leading pedestrian intervals as a way to get in front of trucks when they cross intersections. You might notice the little hand that allows the pedestrian to walk across. We want bikes to be able to use it. But we're also trying to bring more protections to e-bike workers right now, which include a lot of Latino, Mexican immigrants who are really looking for justice in terms of crackdown from the NYPD by using electronic bikes.
Yes.
So there's a lot of legislation that we're trying to build there. So we're problem solvers.
That's great. You also, I think we were talking about this, something about the courts, right? In the sense of people were not, or being detained. I think they were being detained when they went to court to, did you pass any legislation? Are you working on something about it?
So one of the powers that I have as the chair of the Immigration Committee, so not only am I a council member, but I'm the chairman of the Immigration Committee, we have public hearings. And our public hearings are the opportunity to elevate issues and really bring experts to come and talk to us about what's happening. And one of those was around ICE enforcement. And this is the Immigration Customs Enforcement, who are going into courts, and they're going into places to pick up and arrest our immigrants who are going for another court action because they're trying to defend themselves in housing court or other courts, and we think that's a real violation to the trust of the judicial system and how it works. And so there's some state legislation that we're trying to push for, but we're also trying to organize all the defenders who we work with to ensure that we can send a strong message to the state that they need to bar ICE from walking into courts and arrest any one of our immigrant brothers and sisters.
And did you see a spike on these cases after the new administration took over?
Oh, absolutely. As soon as Trump became president, there was an immediate reaction from his Homeland Security teams, and specifically the ICE division, that has seen spikes in across-the-board arrests and deportations. And so we're really catching up in a lot of ways to ensure that everyone has a lawyer, and we're trying to figure out how to get bail, immigration bail, to people as well. And so we're working on ways to ensure that people have all the resources they can, so that we're not separating families. Those are the kind of stories that I'm getting right now from my community, that they're being separated. The breadwinner who's going to work has been picked up and in a deportation proceeding. If we can get a lawyer in front of them, they can get back home. If we can't, they get deported. And so families are getting separated right now in our New York City neighborhoods.
And Carlos, can you tell us a little bit about how important is it for you to pass also or advocate for driver's licenses?
Yes. One of the highest frequency of comments that I get on Facebook or Twitter are about driver's licenses. I very strategically and deliberately endorsed a candidate, Cynthia Nixon, for governor because of that issue. That issue is so important to us statewide to ensure that every immigrant is restored the opportunity, because this is something that New York State had as a policy before 9/11. It changed after 9/11. But allowing everybody to have a driver's license. This is an important thing for public safety. It will bring more and generate more money in the state, and bring insurance premiums down if we have insured licensed people on the ground. Our immigrants work and they drive, and they as part of their job they drive, and this is one of those things that needs to get done now. There's some bills on the table in the state, but we want to make sure that New York City sends a strong message, and we passed a resolution in the City Council through my committee, the Immigration Committee, to support the passage of the New York State licenses for all.
Great, Carlos. And tell us a little bit about how, or just to conclude, how do you see the future of the Mexican community in New York City?
It is a bright future for New York State and New York City and our neighborhoods. With the vibrancy of the Mexican community. It's a beautiful community full of so much spirit and ability for us as a community to not only thrive, but to bring the values of family and collaboration. I see a Mexican community that's a powerful voice in New York City politics to really ensure that every immigrant, every community gets what they need. And the businesses that are growing out of in a lot of ways out of the spirit of the Mexican community in bodegas and restaurants, but we're more than that. And the Mexican Studies Institute is really, I think, focused in ensuring that our Mexican community gets into education opportunities. And so we're going to be doctors, we're going to be PhD candidates and small businesses. We're going to be leaders, and I think this is going to be another chapter of New York City's immigrant story that's going to be a beautiful chapter.
That's great, Carlos. Thank you so much. Can you share with our viewers, I know you're very active on social media, can you share your handles?
Yes. Well, you can follow me on Twitter on Instagram is probably the most favorite, and that's Menchaca, Menchaca, and then Twitter, C Menchaca. And also on Facebook.
That's great. Thank you so much, Carlos.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us for one more episode of the Mexican Studies Oral History Project with Councilmember Carlos Menchaca. We wish you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Mexican Studies Oral History Project.